Good evening. As an older millennial, my appreciation of animation from Japan has only really bloomed in my later years. It's not that I didn't watch anime as a kid, I was right alongside everyone else in watching Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z in syndication. But without the a la carte streaming options that we have today, there wasn't a great on-ramp for someone like me to enjoy the medium any deeper. The licensors of the 80s were appealing primarily to collectors and fans of hyper-violent action, and the 90s was an endless march of trend chasing. Go to any message board discussion of anime in the 90s and early 2000s, and you'd see some absolutely bewildering recommendations. We just kinda got what we could get. Now we've got the absolute opposite situation. A record number of anime adaptations and localizations are releasing every year, with a single de facto monopoly service carrying almost everything, leaving just scraps for the rest of the streaming industry. And with that almost paralyzing amount of options, it's now easier for someone like me to find works that I resonate with, whether it's the laid-back summertime slice-of-life Barakamon, the slow-burn political thriller Aka 13, and many other series over the last 15 years. I've even been able to go back and enjoy more classic series like The Irresponsible Captain Tyler, Nadia and the Secret of Blue Water, and of course, Lupin the Third. And maybe at some point I'll do a deep dive about some of my all-time favorites, but that's not why we're here today. The fact of the matter is, there are way too many series coming out every season, and how are you ever going to find the time to sit down and watch all of them to know it's worth watching? I'm not going to pretend that I am pioneering the curated list, as Anime YouTube is its own giant sprawling network of discourse channels, but many of those channels are tailored more towards otaku and less towards me. I don't care about who is best girl. I don't want to put up with a rancid protagonist just because this show has good world building. Where are the recommendations for people who are just general animation fans? That's why I've chosen 20 series that I thought looked interesting and gave them a multi-episode watch, and I figured I may as well rank them because it's been a while since I've been told I'm wrong by a bunch of people, and it's time a few thousand someone's put me in my place. I even went and made a predictive top 15, so let's see just how wrong I was together. And just so you know, going in, I will have content warnings when appropriate for certain series, and I won't hand-wave away yucky content as non-specific anime bullshit, but I will also not make sweeping judgment about an entire country's artistic medium. Except for Isekai. I'm sorry, Isekai. You've got some issues to work out. Please stop thinking you found a new, innovative take on slavery. I guarantee you it's not. Aside from that, we're all grown-ups here. We can handle this stuff responsibly. So let's start with the stuff that didn't make the cut. This season, shoujo fans are eating slop. Okay, A Condition Called Love isn't the worst romance show I've seen, but this is some real Soylent-level slurry. We've got another protagonist who has never known what love has felt like, learning how to love with the help of a boy she just met, and already I'm feeling whatever Spidey sense feeling isekai fans get when they see a castle town on the words cheat skill. If you don't know what those words mean, don't worry about it. This is grade A, gray nothing, a recycling of every plot beat you've seen in any other romance story without any flavor, any bite, or any personality. So in one scene, Hananoi, he asks, this is a fucking laugh riot, you're gonna laugh your balls off and your boobs off. He asks what kind of hairstyle Hotaru likes, and Hotaru thinks he's asking about her haircut, but he's actually talking about his hair! Can you believe this wacky turn of events? Like most shoujo series, it doesn't get a lot of love in the visual or audio departments, just sort of treading the bare minimum line, though I do think the colored line work and soft use of gradients is okay. I just think you could do a lot better here, even if you like a soft, fluffy love story. Something like Kimi ni Tokide, for example. Hell, just put on Cypher the Video, it's at least baffling.
Relative humidity is 54%. That's WWKO News. I'm David Parker on Radio 85.7, the music station, New York. This winter, enjoy America the Beautiful.
Yeah.
Astro Note has to be commended for its cold opening being a full-on tribute to awkwardly animated 80s cartoons, with sliding cell spaceships, animation on twos, and dorky sound effects, but being a tribute is basically how you could describe the show as a whole. An anime about a boarding house with a bunch of kooky tenants and a budding romance between the lead and the landlord. Now, I haven't seen Rumiko Takahashi's Mason Ikoku, but I'm pretty sure this is Mason Ikoku, and I think any longtime anime fan would see this show and think, boy, the word tribute is pulling some long late hours on this one. And we'll get back to that awkward animation because, well... The story involves Takumi, an unemployed cook, getting brought on as the Astro Lodge's new head chef, which is mostly motivated by our lead's puppy dog crush on Mira, the lodge's manager, who is also secretly the heir to the throne of an alien planet. In the process, he gets to know all of the other eccentrics in the building, like the novelist Shokichi, who looks like he transferred over from a 60s anime, or this precocious kid and his dad with a very large head. Honestly, none of them are nearly as weird as the anime wants you to believe. They're more loose sketches or first drafts of characters than a cast of goofballs you could grow to love. Although I do think Idol by Night, Asshole by Day, Terorun is pretty great. But speaking of loose sketches, oh boy, I've seen some low-budget anime in the past, but Astro Note's really fucking wonky. I gotta start with this, I don't know exactly what went wrong in production, but all the drawings in the show seem to have been awkwardly upscaled from a lower resolution, which makes for weirdly pixelated artwork and bad interlacing. I don't know if this was a compositing snafu, or a problem exporting to render, or even a problem Crunchyroll caused, but it's so obvious that it's hard to explain how it got overlooked by everyone. Or maybe they knew it was an issue and just had no time to fix it. I mean, it's a brutal industry, and sometimes you just gotta get the product out. But it's a pretty glaring problem, and the drawings aren't all that amazing to begin with. This show's stiffer than a corpse, and I can tell that some artists are trying their best with Takumi's exasperated expressions, but the overall look is really unpleasant. I know what they're trying to do, it just isn't working for me at all visually, with the exception of a surprisingly pleasant opening theme that has more bouncy and lively animation than any single shot from the actual show. This isn't Gun Musashi levels of bad, but it is distracting and it takes me out of enjoying the show completely. While a mixture of spy action and Umbrella Academy-esque misfit siblings might sound like a solid cocktail, there's an ingredient in Mission Yozakura family that spoils the whole drink. Taiyo and Mutsumi are childhood friends, but Mutsumi happens to belong to a family of elite spies, and the eldest son thinks Taiyo is a threat to Mutsumi's safety, leading to a violent confrontation with the others that ends with our two leads getting married, because the golden rule of the Yozakuras is that no family member can kill another. It's a pretty weird rule, seems like most families would abide by that, or they'd end up on that chapter. If it wasn't for that eldest son, this would be a fine, if unspectacular premiere, but him lingering around bothers me. He's an absolute creep, and while this is depicted as monstrous by the show, I have a pretty good feeling his behavior is going to become a silly in-joke over the course of the series, and I'm not down with that. Moving on. Another one that didn't make the cut was Unnamed Memory, and it's not because it was particularly terrible, but it wasn't particularly interesting either. You've got a prince with a curse on him, scaling a tower of traps and terrors to win a wish from a witch who rests at the top. When she can't grant the wish, he decides to wish for her to live with him instead. It's just weird, folks. Not like wacky or upsetting, just kinda off. The protagonist threatens the witch with an anti-magic sword that could definitely kill her. I mean, more than a regular sword already can. So this particular wish granting feels a bit coerced. It's not a great start to what's going to be a romance story, and that's on top of having a flat and uninteresting protagonist, so I think I'll pass. It's a season of 20th anniversary remakes, and Spice and Wolf is kinda flat. Yeah, sorry, a lot of these remakes of the past decade have really missed the mark, not capturing the energy or spirit of the originals, and don't get me started about sequels. A remake or reboot should either brim with reverence for the original or make its own path, confidently. But too many sit in that awkward space in between, or feel like they're just there to maintain brand interest. I will confess, I've never read or watched the original, so I am talking partially out of my ass, but the production here is so average and unflattering that its existence feels obligatory rather than celebratory. Alright, enough mediocrity, let's get to the good stuff.
Not 14, not 16, you're right in between.
Year in, year out, kids are treated to a new Precure series as we hit the Magical Girl franchise's 20th anniversary. Of course, in America, we've only really gotten legal access to the last 5, unless you count Saban's Glitter Force localizations, and, I mean, I guess you could do that. You could count Warriors of the Wind as an official Studio Ghibli release too. There's a lot of stuff you can just do if you want to. This year's edition is called Wonderful Precure, and as it is keen to remind us multiple times, it's set in Animal Town, a place where humans and animals live together. Which, isn't that most towns? It's not like people sharing a house with giraffes, it's just a lot of pet owners, basically. You know what, let's just call it Portland. Iroha and her dog Komugi live in Portland alongside other pet owners like the extremely shy Mayu and the bookworm Satoru. When a monster attacks the park and endangers Iroha, Komugi's determination to save her causes a magical transformation that turns her into the very human Cure Wonderful. And when Iroha eventually becomes a Cure fighter herself, the two work together to protect Portland from various transformed animals. As far as the theming goes, it's kind of on the weaker side, as I mentioned before. I think they could have gone a lot stronger on the gimmick and made the town really ridiculously animal-obsessed, but it's at least a stronger theme than Tropical Rouge Precure's motivation. That said, the Mermaid Hook of Rouge was a lot more unique, as talking mascot characters are already a fixture of the franchise. Recent series have also really dialed up the cosmetic merchandise and utilizing it in the show to sell to kids, and I think that's kind of interesting. Here in America, we've had this trend of kids going into Sephora's and just filming themselves fucking everything up for TikTok. I guess having something you can buy from a toy aisle might be less destructive. The animation for this entry is a bit inconsistent, with some striking action shots and others that are kind of swampy and awkward, and then a fair number of static action pose shots as well. True to form, though, the fully orchestral music is on point and fits most scenes really nicely. These shows have way too many episodes for me to fully finish, but there's at least one episode I'd like to give a shout out to, which has a brief crossover with Crayon Shin-chan, which, fuck it, why not? If Uncle Grandpa can cross over with Steven Universe, then Shinosuke should be allowed to invade any show he wants. From one polar opposite to another, how about a tale of the world's deadliest hitman so good at his job that he's forced to lie low and blend into society for a year without getting into trouble? That's the premise of The Fable, a Disney Plus exclusive that follows an assassin and his assistant as they assume false identities and are assigned to Osaka to live like the average Joe. But that's proving hard for someone who only knows two things, killing and laughing at a low-rent prop comic. And so the Fable's assistant has to keep him from murdering someone every time they go to the convenience store or drink at the pub. I like the art style, it's got this kinda gangly, King of the Hill looking dash of realistic proportions, but allowing for weird and ugly faces, parentheses complimentary. And the music is nice and jazzy and has a really catchy theme song. But having watched a few episodes, I still don't know quite what to make of this show. It's a dark comedy, but a very dry one, and the stuff that the show considers funny is having a difficult time landing with me due to the execution. Yeah, conceptually it's funny that the Fable is so good at his job that he can fake getting the shit beat out of him and crying, but it's handled too coldly, like someone giving you instructions over the phone. It makes me think that despite the positives of this show, the Fable may be one of those watch one episode and then read the manga series. It doesn't do anything particularly bad, but its humor seems like it reads better off the page than time to animation.
Swing your partner 1 and 3! A do-si-do for the big 13!
There are some shows that represent a world I simply do not understand, but still manage to be entertaining enough to keep me from tuning out. One such show is The Many Sides of Voice Actor Radio, a comedy about idle voice actors whose stage personalities are completely different from their real-world counterparts, both of whom share a class together, and both of whom despise each other. Now they've been recruited together to put on a radio show about their daily lives they don't have and do not want to share. It's a simple enough premise that it's easy to follow along even if you don't know the ins and outs of the idol industry, which I don't. When I was in high school, I was mostly worried about getting caught playing games on my TI-86 calculator, not being repped by an agency, or voicing magical girls, or dealing with stalkers and classmates who have literal binders with my picture on them. I guess if I lived in Hollywood it would be different. It's still very alien to me. But even without knowing much about this particular side of voice acting, you can still understand the pressures the girls are going through, and root for them to form a friendship and fight against the cold and uncaring industry that churns through idols at an unfathomable pace. I mean, think about how many VTubers are with their 4th agency and nickname at this point. I don't even watch them, and I see graduation news almost every day. This kind of show may not necessarily be for me, but I think that if you like an opposites attract show, you might enjoy this. If a condition called love was so flavorless it made you wonder if you caught COVID, you might find Whisper Me a Love Song a little more appealing to your palate. It's a romance that begins with an awkward misconception by a young guitar player who realizes that the girl that just confessed to her didn't actually fall in love with her, but with her singing. In contrast to the by-the-numbers conceptualization and execution of the other show, Whisper has put more thought into its characters and surrounding cast, as well as the dynamics between the two. While Yori is our primary POV and has the kinds of internal confusion and awkwardness that plagues many a shoujo heroine, she's not the traditional helpless lead being led to a romantic conclusion, but someone who wants to build the right foundation and win her love interest over. Himari, on the other hand, is bubbly and a little bit obsessive. There's always a little bit of weirdness when a romance is about a musician and their fan, but in this case, Yuri's no stage performer. She doesn't even like performing in front of other people, but she is willing to play for her crush. Still, Whisper feels content to play to the typical beats of a shoujo romance, even with these additional details. A misconception over fandom love versus romantic love doesn't sit that far apart from the usual misconceptions that grease the wheels of this particular narrative vehicle. Also, this is another romance show with a subpar production. It's not flat out ugly, but it's got some inconsistencies in the art that only seem to get worse with each episode, paired with news of episode delays that suggest a troubled development. But I still think it's worth watching if you want a sugary queer love story with a couple of characters that you want to root for to figure their feelings out. For me personally though, I'd like a little more bite. For those looking for a gentler show, Bartender fits the bill, or fills the glass? There's a simile in there somewhere. I've known about the original Bartender anime, but always kept it on the higher shelves of my backlog closet, so while I'm coming into this green, I am aware of the appeal of it. Anyone who has played Coffee Talk or that other game I refuse to mention knows that there's something both meditative and elucidating in the process of preparing drinks for new and returning customers, as you learn how to match their preferences and also learn more about them in the process. And that's about what I expected to find here, although it did zig a couple of times when I expected it to zag. The series starts, for example, not with the titular bartender, but with the co-workers of a prestigious hotel chain that are searching for a bartender that can pass their chief and chairman's brutal tests to earn a job at the hotel's currently cordoned off bar room. These are the POV characters to guide us into the apparently high-stakes world of serving alcohol, with the boss demanding a hire that can produce a glass of God, with the helpful descriptor of, "You'll know it when you taste it." After chewing through recruit after recruit, the pair stumble into an absent-minded park-goer who is prone to losing his wallet and other possessions. But wouldn't you just gosh darn know it, that guy is actually a genius bartender working out of an obscure private bar called Eden Hall, and he's actually a bit of a Sherlock Holmes, at figuring out what to serve people based on his keen eye for the tiniest details. Though the story is primed to eventually get Ryu into that hotel, the week-to-week episodes are exactly what you would expect. A tough customer comes in, Ryu figures out exactly what drink they need based on a cold read of their personality and appearance, and drinking the cocktail magically transports them to a 90s commercial. You're not going to get any emotional highs from this show, but the general direction and tone could make Bartender the ideal wind-down to your evening.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10!
Dipping my beak into palace intrigue, I predicted that I might be raving about Yatagarasu with its premise of mythological corvids running a secluded kingdom, although I had to eat a little crow when I realized it wouldn't be quite as literal as that. Look, a political intrigue show where everyone's just birds would fucking kick ass, okay? There are in fact people who can turn into birds, but for the most part, you're seeing them as flesh and blood. As the story goes, the Yatagarasu were three-legged giant crows that eventually settled down and formed the Kingdom of Yamauchi, with each of its vital resources governed by one of the four houses, each of whom have sent one of their noble daughters to compete to win the hand of the Kinyu, a so-called golden raven and crown prince that will one day be the emperor. A show like this is one of the reasons I waited to do this video until midway through the season, because you really can't review it from just a single 25-minute episode. There are just too many pieces moving around on the board, and though characterization is not as deep a focus as the narrative itself, there are a couple of interesting pieces to talk about. Yamiya is the prince's new assistant, a teen who hides his true cunning self behind a masquerade of foolishness, and he has a serious grudge against the political and ruling systems of Yamauchi, who took him away from his birth mother. I also like one of the four noblewomen in waiting, who's this sardonic drunkard who recognizes the facade and throws shade to it. But the intrigue and the world itself are the real drivers of this story, as various plots to assassinate or disinherit the prince are mounting, with a cold and calculating empress and the prince's own half-brother at the center. It's gonna be a slow burn, but one that could have a very satisfying payoff if it sticks to landing.
Reinovi is number 9.
As many of you already likely know, the creator of Dragon Ball, Dr. Slump, and that iconic art style of Dragon Quest, Akira Toriyama, passed away earlier this year, but not before a film adaptation and video game based off of his one-shot Sandland were set into motion. And now we have a TV series on Disney Plus based off the film. I don't have quite the nostalgic attachment to Toriyama's work as other anime fans, though I am a big fan of Dragon Quest, to the point that I even played through all of Dragon Quest Swords. It was fun. Kinda. Sandland is set in a desert apocalypse where the world's water is hoarded by a greedy king, leaving the impoverished villages to fight over what's left. Sheriff Rao's had enough, and based on a hunch, he convinces a tribe of demons to look for a spring that may be hiding in the southern part of the desert. And by convinces, I mean bribes them with a PlayStation 2. Beelzebub, the demon prince, takes on the task while roping in the reluctant thief. Look, I don't know, what do you want his name to be, Doug? As they set off on a journey through the badlands of barren towns, bandits, and big baddies looking to bite him up, all in search of a spring that might not exist. It may not be the most original story told in this setting, but it allows for some fun yokai designs, and I like the main cast so far. I think that if any show were to take well to a hybrid 2D CG approach, it would be one designed by Toriyama, whose character designs have already graced many 3D games like Dragon Quest XI, Blue Dragon, a lot of dragon-centric stuff. Although that does also mean it can look, at times, like a video game, which is not helped by there being a Sandland video game. It's honestly not surprising that all of the incidental characters who have to be hand-drawn look better integrated against the lavishly illustrated desert backdrops than the often CG characters that make up the main cast. While Beelzebub looks mostly fine, other characters like Thief and the Sheriff stick out pretty sorely, with additional detailing and constant movement that contrasts pretty much anyone they're speaking to. The CG does allow for entertaining cinematography in the action sequences, such as the group's escape from a giant sand dragon, but it never settles into a state where I stop noticing it. The one isekai-adjacent show on my list is of the reverse variety, where a character comes to Earth from another world rather than the other way around. Sarah's a princess who escapes from a rebel coup on her kingdom through a portal that literally crash-lands her in the domain of a grumpy, down-on-his-luck PI, the kind that rats out cheating boyfriends to their spouses and eats nothing but rice and eggs on a shoestring budget. That might all be set to change once he discovers this kid's magical powers, because for all intents and purposes, Sarah is basically a magical girl, and an extremely chaotic one at that. She's also threatened to wipe his brain and leave him comatose if he kicks her out, so the two become a reluctant crime-solving pair of father figure and gremlin girl, and that's before Sarah's other friends show up. Okay, so this isn't actually a crime-solving show, it's more of a pure fish-out-of-water comedy that happens to have some detective work in it. A lot of the humor involves characters from another world rapidly adjusting to life on Earth. One of my favorite storylines involves Sarah's retainer Livia, who has nowhere to go and no legal identity upon reaching Earth, making her homeless. This series does a great job of humanizing those in extreme poverty, as well as those who would try to exploit them. In one episode, Livia gets hired by a shady cabaret club solely on her looks, while another episode has her stumbling her way into a cult who decides that she's their new savior after she utilizes some healing magic. The show has some good comic energy and some legitimate laugh-out-loud moments. But I do have some reservations. The show gets a bit excessive with titillation at times when it comes to Livia, and it never really feels like it fits the tone of the show. I also wish there were more adults in the cast. No, this lawyer that's supposed to be 34 years old does not count. The designs in general are just a bit too youthful, I don't care for it. But on the whole, I'd say the show is perfectly fine. A snack of a show that won't stick with you, but is enjoyable in the moment.
Hey, look over there. It's question 7.
If you need an escape from everything, you can always count on a cozy slice-of-life show to heal your heart and relax your mind. And Tonari no Yokai-san adds a bit of mythological flair to the genre. It's got all manner of supernatural creatures, from a cat who's learned to walk and talk, to an introverted kappa, to this guy with a car for a head. I mean, I'm sure that's a real yokai. Well, real. You know what I mean. These yokai mingle with humans in a shared mountain village, one that Jiro, half man, half crow, is sworn to protect. But there is no one protagonist in this show. Mutsumi's looking for the truth about her missing father, Fuchio is learning how to be a yokai and how to connect with others, and Jiro is dealing with the sins of his past. I like that despite the size of the cast, they all have their own individual character arcs that will get explored. The show has some super standout layouts, and though the village itself could be a little more defined or flavored, the characters and vibes make up for any environmental shortcomings. It's also got a bit of mystery and danger to it, which elevates its stakes a little higher than the average slice-of-life series. That might mean it is not quite as chill or easygoing as a more grounded show like Aria or Nan Biori, but it still has plenty of heartwarming moments to balance out its darker touches. And I think that having that balance makes it an easier show to recommend to the uninitiated viewer that might find those other shows a little too laconic. This next entry wasn't even in my predictive top 20, but it caught me by surprise with its mix of Saturday morning fun, classical design, and a strong production from Studio Bones. Time Patrol Bon is the latest adaptation of the 80s sci-fi comedy from Fujiko Fujio, the creators of Doraemon and Ninja Hattori. It involves a time-traveling defense agency that works under a very strict code of ethics and can only save the lives of people who aren't particularly relevant to history. After-average student Bon Namihira accidentally stumbles upon Agent Reem Stream, it's a crazy name, and her assistant Boyoyong meddling with the flow of time, the agency debates erasing him from history to protect the secret of time travel, until it's discovered that erasing him would cause the future to change, so instead they enlist him as a time patrol agent to travel with Reem through past, present, and future to save people that may not matter on the grand stage of history, but matter to those around them. As you might expect, this is more of an episodic Problem of the Week show, and I have no problem with that. Some of my favorite anime are episodic, because it's easier for me to jump in after long stretches of time without needing to remember where I was in the story and what everyone was doing. It also looks great, awkward CG aside, and it manages to make its smaller stories still have weight and tension to them. And I have a soft spot for time travel series ever since shows like Peabody and Sherman both... Peabody and Sherman both entertained and educated kids like me. Time Patrol Bon is the kind of show we need more of, and it's already got a second core coming in July.
You don't wanna blow it on number 5.
I have not watched a whole lot of shows about idol groups or bands. Heck, I still haven't even started on Carol and Tuesday yet. But I can recognize when a show with that focus has a lot of passion put into it, and Jellyfish Can't Swim in the Night is certainly a high-effort production. It's a show about identity and taking back your dreams from those that stomped all over them. Mahiru is a former artist who gave up drawing after witnessing her art being mocked by fellow students. Kano is a former idol who was looking to recapture the musical spotlight after a messy breakup. The two meet serendipitously when an amateur solo artist plants posters all over Mahiru's Jellyfish mural, and the two quickly discover each other's passions and internal conflicts. This leads to the creation of a semi-anonymous jellyfish-themed artist group called Jelly, with Kano as the singer, Mihuru as the designer and promotional artist, and the later editions of Kimura the fangirl-turned-composer, and Kiwi the VTuber who remixes their songs and puts together their music videos. Can the four find success on the internet where the real world failed them? Or will the same pressures and personal demons follow them to the digital space? Jellyfish sports some well-crafted layouts, color splashes, and background details courtesy of Doga Kobo, the same studio that animated Oshi no Ko. Another show I haven't seen. Look, you read the premise of the first episode out loud to a stranger and see where it gets you. I'm sure it's fine. Did I mention I once gave Eden of the East an A? You can't trust anything I say. What I can say is that the layouts in a couple of episodes sometimes lean into fan service territory, which I'm not comfortable with. It's another situation where it doesn't really feel congruent with both the vibes and the target audience. It doesn't completely cross the line, but it furrows my eyebrow a little, which as far as I know is the only sentence in the English language where furrows is used. I like the themes of the show. Imposter syndrome is definitely haunting some of the team, and there's bound to be a lot of hardships, drama, and tears ahead of these kids. I think that anyone who enjoyed last year's Bang Dreams series will probably find Jellyfish Can't Swim to bring that same roller coaster energy. An anime I watched quite a bit of back in the Tonari days was Yu Yu Hakusho. I definitely enjoyed the idea of a delinquent asshole with a heart of gold, learning how to open up to others and becoming stronger not just as a fighter, but as a human being. Now imagine an entire team of assholes with hearts of gold, and you've got Windbreaker, the latest show from Cloverworks, the studio behind Spy Family and Bocchi the Rock. I thought that maybe a hot-blooded shonen show was not really going to be up my alley anymore, but Windbreaker won me over with its cast and setting. Sakura Hakura's just moved into town looking to become top dog at a high school known for its punch-happy punks. But he gets a rude awakening from the local cafe owner Kotoa Tachibana, who informs him that things don't quite work that way around here. After years of rampant lawlessness, the gang of rowdy miscreants at Furin High School decided to use their fighting talent for good, protecting their neighborhood from roving rival gangs. So being a lone wolf and punching your way to the top won't actually get you anywhere here. After a massive scuffle in which Sakura fends off a couple dozen goons like it's the Agent Smith fight from the second Matrix movie, the Furin squad step in and defend and protect him, something he's never experienced before. And so, Sakura joins this peacekeeping punch and kick brigade, and learns how to be a hero, make friends, and to take a dang compliment. This dude's got baggage, and he is completely unequipped to handle any kind of praise or appreciation. The animation isn't necessarily Cloverworks' strongest, but it is effective at selling the scrappy and intense fighting that these teens are employing. But it's the characters that really shine here, with one very annoying exception. There's the charming Suo, who is half easygoing, half delusional LARPer, the team captain Hiragi, who is constantly stressed out, the brooding and lurching Sugishita, and many more oddballs. But I gotta be honest, I really want Sakura to beat the shit out of Nirei. He sucks, man. Fuck me. I'm so tired of the explainer sideline character that shows up in every shonen series, and this irritating iteration irks me considerably. He's not funny, he whines all the time, and his role could easily have been given to Suo if it was absolutely necessary to the plot, which it really isn't. Without him, this would be an even higher recommendation, but with him, it will really come down to your tolerance for shouty, scaredy cats. It might be surprising for casual sports viewers to learn that the Harlem Globetrotters once were a serious basketball team. In fact, before the NBA was conceived, the Globetrotters won the national championships against the then Minneapolis Lakers, twice. They weren't even from New York, they were from Chicago. But nowadays, the world knows them as the goofball, trick-shooting comedy act that regularly demolishes those scoundrels, the Washington Generals. And while no one goes to a Globetrotters game looking for serious basketball anymore, there's still always that tiny, little, possibly ironic, hope for the ultimate schadenfreude of seeing them lose. And if you are one of those cursed, perverse people, then Go Go Loser Ranger is definitely for you. Yeah, I was building up to something, and it was connecting professional basketball to superhero Sentai. Eat shit, Adam Silver. According to the fiction, monsters and rangers have been fighting each other in an epic battle to determine the future of humanity for the last 13 years. In reality, that battle ended 12 years ago, with the monsters' overlords all defeated and destroyed, leaving only the Putty Patrol-esque grunts to shapeshift into various convoluted villains and engage in mock battles held in arenas for the purpose of satiating Earth's inexhaustible bloodlust, and of course, to sell sponsorships. This carny act may be fine for most of the grunts, but Fighter D has had enough of the charade, and using his transformation ability, assumes the form of a human looking to join the Ranger Force, with the intent of destroying these capitalist assholes from the inside. He gets some unlikely help and hindrance from recruiters who know more about him than he realizes, but both recognize the rot at the core of the institution and just have different perspectives on dealing with it. But it will take more than just inside help to take the Dragon Rangers down, because they're a sprawling organization with lower level members stationed at every garrison, and the top rangers themselves are as clever as they are wicked. This is a show for underdogs, a tale about the downtrodden fighting back against their oppressors, helmed by Keiichi Sato of Tiger and Bunny fame, and it's got some nice animation from Yostar Pictures to go along with it. Don't expect anything too dark or too cerebral, as it is a Sentai comedy at its core, but Loser Rangers got the right formula to be a possible yearly standout.
I love the way you groove my number two.
On to one of the bigger series this season, Kaiju No. 8, an action show with a bite of comedy about the unsubtly named Kafka Hibino, who metamorphosizes into a giant monster in a country where giant monsters are swiftly eliminated by kaiju hunters, just as swiftly as they emerge. This is one of those anime where they show me a facet of the world, and I become fixated on that facet and want it split off into its own series. Because come on, tell me that Kaiju Cleanup Crew isn't a fun series concept by itself. As Kafka would tell you, it's a serious, dangerous job, and while blasting into massive intestines with a chainsaw might be an absolute nightmare, you can't tell me he doesn't take his job with a bit of pride and passion. How best do you tackle the dissection of various kaiju corpses? Is the meat suitable for cooking? What does a city constantly caked in blood and organs start to smell like after a few years? You can blast buildings with a power washer all you want, that shit's gonna get into all the little cracks of pavement and sewer grates. Of course, that's not what the series is really about. Because Kafka's got a dream of joining those hunter divisions, like his former childhood friend Mina, who has already risen the ranks significantly. But having been rejected in the past, he's resigned himself to his fate, until a chance encounter with a kaiju on the job site changes the lives of him and his fellow co-worker, the neurotic edgelord Reno. While in the hospital, a weird kaiju fly decides to engage in some light vor, and Kafka undergoes a shocking transformation that Reno happens to witness. Now the two of them must keep Kafka's new powers a secret while trying to get a coveted spot in the defense force. But if a human can become a kaiju, then kaiju might be able to blend among the humans as well. This is a really well-paced action show, with lots of comedy to take the edge off of the grimmest moments, like if someone in Attack on Titan threw a pie or something. And the diegetic music is pretty great, mixing up dramatic orchestral strings with splashes of power pop and jazz. Not so wild about that whack Maroon 5-ass credit tune though. Kafka and Reno are a great duo, and I'm hopeful that more comedy will come from at least a couple of the Defense Force members. I mean, they have a white tiger for a member, like it's fucking Cyber 6. So I would hope that Kafka isn't the only class clown. That would help to balance out the almost comically Evangelion character Kikoru, whose backstory is a little too on the nose. Similar to Loser Ranger, this has the makings of a multi-year franchise, so if dramatic kaiju punching and silly gag comedy appeal to you, you may want to get in on the ground floor. My number one defines saving the best for last, as this show's first episode literally just premiered a week ago. It's perhaps contrarian to my goal of reviewing shows beyond just their opening episode, but Dead Demons Destruction has already proven itself in the theatrical circuit, and this TV adaptation is off to an amazing start. It's based on a manga by Isao Asano, the author of grounded and bleak stories like Goodnight Punpun, and it has a style and execution unlike anything else this year. 3 years earlier, aliens invaded the Earth and hovered ominously over Japan. Now, in present day, those aliens are still hovering, still ominous, but the effects that they've caused on society have been entirely indirect. An attack by the US on the spaceship has left one of their cities in complete ruins. War is on the verge of breaking out, and people are dealing with the hysteria and trauma that comes from having collectively witnessed an unparalleled tragedy. Kodade's mother, for example, acts like someone who would still bleach all their groceries long after the CDC said that it was pointless to do. This isn't a story about humanity bravely fighting against aliens for the future of our species. It's a story about teens forced to grow up in a society that is perilously close to completely breaking down, just trying to live as normal of a life as they can as fascism draws near. And these kids are top-tier little shits. One of my favorite aspects of Asano's work is his realistic depiction of how teens act and behave, and we are far off the mold with this cast. They're three-dimensional characters with complex personalities and flaws, who bounce off each other in weird and interesting ways, and who laments about the downfall of the world with that ironic detachment that defines our social media generation. Bringing this adaptation to life is Production Plus H, the studio behind Netflix's The Orbital Children, with direction from Tomoyuki Kurokawa of the infamous Girls with Guns trilogy, and a screenplay from Reiko Yoshida of Violent Evergarden and the Hike story. It's an all-star production for a manga that deserves one. The only question remaining about this adaptation is what additions will be made in this TV version, and how they'll pace it in comparison to the two-part theatrical release. But I feel pretty confident that when this season wraps up, Dedede Destruction will be one of the top anime this year. Alright, first, let's talk about how wildly wrong my predictions were. I was not too far off with my top picks, but obviously the biggest surprise were the late entries I hadn't planned on, 2 of which made the top 10. Time Patrol Bond is a delight, and Dedede Destruction is as good as I hoped it would be back when I originally planned this video for May. Biggest disappointment is probably Spice and Wolf. It just didn't hit for me like I thought it would. I may try the previous anime adaptation to see if I like that one better. Of course, the million-dollar question is, which shows this season am I actually going to finish? My Nimrod brain has a hard time watching a TV show all the way through to completion, and I don't know why. So even though I just told you what I thought the best shows were, that doesn't mean that I will watch all or even most of them beyond this video. I have an anime backlog that stretches back for years, and it includes some of the greatest shows ever made. I know I should watch all Mushishi. I should finish Kaiba. I need to watch Odd Taxi. I know. But at least as far as this season goes, there are only a couple that I know I'll finish. One of them is Tonari no Yokai-san because it's got that great mix of comfort food and curiosity, and all the different running plot lines. Another is Yatagarasu, since it's bound to have a lot of twists and turns and political machinations and all that good stuff. And then, honestly, Time Patrol Bond, because I can drop in and out whenever I want and enjoy some silly time travel shenanigans. I should also mention before I go that there is a somewhat train-sized elephant in the room. Or perhaps missing from the room. Yeah, everyone's really talking big about Train to the End of the World. I'm sure it's great, but Jeff Bezos fucking put the wrong subs on the first episode in the Amazon app. Fucking bald dipshit idiot moron. It's dumb, he's dumb. Fuck you, Jeffrey. Maybe I'll swing back around to it in the future, especially considering Summer's lineup is not the most exciting. But hey, maybe there's something in there that you're excited about. Go ahead and leave that in the comments below. And if there's any shows you're currently watching this season, let me know what you think about them, or why I'm a moron for not including them. I'll leave any additional thoughts about this season in a pinned post. And next time, I may just stick to premieres, because holy shit, my brain was not prepared to fit so many story arcs and character names in there. Which is probably why I butchered the pronunciation of half of them. Sorry! I gave G Gundam an F in 2003. Why is anyone listening to me? It's at least a C+. I mean, come on.